Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unearthing the unwritten past. We're literally embarking on a massive journey back in time to investigate one of the absolute greatest mysteries of our existence. How do we actually study human history from the millions of years before the invention of writing? I mean, think about it for a second. When the pages are completely blank, how on earth do we hear the stories of our ancient ancestors? Well, that is exactly the fascinating puzzle we're going to solve today. Let's get into it. So traditionally, history relies super heavily on written records, right? We're talking about the journals, ancient texts, and carved inscriptions of our ancestors. We use all of that to understand who we are and where we came from. But that leaves us with a massive silent gap in our timeline. It's the period we call prehistory. If the very idea of history is supposed to rely on inquiry and solid evidence, how do we investigate a time with absolutely zero texts? Okay, let's dive into this. To make sense of it all, historians actually categorize our past into three distinct periods, and it's based entirely on the written word. First, we have history. That's the era of written scripts that we've successfully deciphered. Then there's proto-history. This is a really fascinating transitional stage, where a script was written down, but we just haven't been able to translate it yet. It's still a mystery. But today, our focus is entirely on the prehistoric period. This is our ancient past where there are absolutely no written records at all. Just a completely unwritten, silent gap. And this brilliantly illustrates how historical evidence is mapped out. Sources generally split into two main branches, literary and archaeological. Now, since we've already established that the prehistoric era has zero literary sources, no indigenous religious texts, no foreign accounts, nothing, we are forced to rely entirely on the archaeological side. Things like ancient inscriptions, coins, and buried monuments become our only flashlight into the deep, dark past. But here's the catch. For the very earliest humans, even monuments and coins didn't exist yet. So where did our archaeological inquiry into this deepest era actually begin? Well, a major breakthrough in the Indian subcontinent happened way back in 1863. A geologist named Robert Bruce Foote was out exploring a seemingly mundane gravel pit in Tamil Nadu, and there, hidden right in the dirt, he unearthed a Paleolithic hand axe. This was the very first prehistoric tool ever discovered in the region. Because of this monumental find, he earned the title of the father of prehistoric archaeology in India. He proved that the clues were out there, literally buried right beneath our feet. But finding a stone tool or an ancient bone is one thing. How do we actually know how old it is? Well, this is where incredible scientific detective work like carbon-14 dating comes into play. Because carbon-14 is a radioactive isotope that decays at a steady, uniform rate after a living organism dies, carefully measuring its loss acts kind of like a molecular clock. By measuring that exact decay, scientists can calculate the precise age of ancient bones and organic remains. It's honestly a lot like time travel. Let's move to and see how this builds the bigger picture. By applying these precise dating techniques to physical fossils discovered all over the globe, we can actually piece together the physical evolution of the human family tree. I mean, we didn't just spring into existence as modern humans. We see this clear physical development from early ape-like ancestors, standing upright, slowly transforming over time into taller, more advanced beings capable of wielding weapons and really mastering their environment. And the stretches of time between these evolutionary leaps, they are absolutely staggering. Roughly 5 million years ago, we see fossils like the famous Lucy in Africa, belonging to the Australopithecus group. And it takes millions of years of slow incremental change before we see Homo habilis emerging around 2 million years ago. Then, by 1.5 million years ago, Homo erectus appears across Kenya and Java. Finally, our direct ancestors, modern man, or Homo sapiens, they only evolved around 50,000 years ago. Now, anchoring this massive global timeline specifically to the Indian subcontinent gives us some equally breathtaking dates. The earliest evidence of prehistoric man appearing in India actually traces back to the Bori caves, located in the Pune region. These findings date back an incredible 1.67 million years ago. Just try to imagine that for a second. Over 1.5 million years of human history unfolding right there, long before the first word was ever spoken, let alone written down. Because these early humans obviously didn't leave behind iron or bronze, archaeologists classify their eras based on what they did use, and that was stone. They used the rocks found right in their immediate surroundings to carve out a survival. This gives us the aptly named Stone Age, which is derived from the Greek word lithos.
And based on the shifting techniques they used to shape these stones, we break this massive stretch down into three main periods: the Paleolithic, or Old Stone Age, the Mesolithic, or Middle Stone Age, and the Neolithic, or New Stone Age.
And the difference between these periods is entirely technological. Paleolithic tools are crude, they're bulky and completely unpolished, essentially just heavy chipped rocks that provided a blunt edge. But as we move forward in time into the Mesolithic and Neolithic eras, the tools become noticeably smaller, sharper, and highly refined into purposeful blades and scrapers. It's fascinating because you can physically see the evolution of the human mind simply by looking at the precision of their craftsmanship over time. But here is what's truly mind-blowing to me. It's the sheer scale of that first phase, the Paleolithic period. The Old Stone Age covers a massive 99% of all human history. Just let that sink in for a moment. 99%. For 99% of the time humans have existed on this planet, we were nomadic wanderers just surviving with crude stone tools. Everything else we typically think of as history, the empires, the wars, the technology, writing, space travel, that whole shebang happens in that tiny final 1%. It's wild. So the crucial point is, because this Paleolithic era is just so vast, it gets broken down even further into lower, middle, and upper periods. Over hundreds of thousands of years, we see this really gradual transition. We move from Homo erectus using hard quartzite rock in the lower Paleolithic, to Neanderthals crafting sharper flake tools in the middle, and finally down to Homo sapiens fashioning complex blades in the upper Paleolithic. Now, despite this slow evolution in their tools, the day-to-day lifestyle throughout the entire Paleolithic age remained incredibly harsh. I mean, these people were strictly nomadic hunter-gatherers. They didn't produce food, they only scavenged it. With no permanent homes, they sheltered under natural rock overhangs, inside caves, or even within hollow tree trunks. Society was just small bands of blood relatives constantly on the move, living in very real, constant fear of wild creatures. And we know they were there because of physical evidence, like the fossil of a Homo erectus discovered at Hathnora in the Narmada Basin. We also know about this harsh lifestyle by uncovering what we call their factory sites. These are basically the places where early humans found suitable rock and sat down to craft those tools. And these aren't just isolated finds either. They are scattered widely across the subcontinent. From the Sohan Valley way up in Punjab, stretching all the way across to Didwani in Rajasthan, and down through the Narmada Valley and the famous Bhimbetka caves. Their footprint was literally everywhere. Eventually, though, that 99% of history began to shift. We finally enter the Mesolithic Age, or the Metal Stone Age, which spans from roughly 10,000 to 4,000 BC. This was an absolutely critical transitional period. Humans finally started to move away from constant nomadic wandering and actually began to form semi-permanent community settlements. And their tools adapted too, shifting to these tiny, highly effective stone implements known as microliths. And this forward momentum led directly into the Neolithic Age, the New Stone Age. Running roughly from 4000 to 1800 BCE, this is the final phase of the Stone Age. Here, we really begin to see the earliest seeds of actual food production and complex societal structures. It's essentially the runway that ultimately allowed human civilizations to take flight. Now, what's really interesting about this is that our ancestors left us a lot more than just cold stones and bones. They actually left us art. In the caves of Bhimbetka, which served as shelters during the Upper Paleolithic period, archaeologists discovered these absolutely incredible rock paintings and carvings. Using mostly red and green colors, these early humans painted the world around them. Bisons, elephants, tigers, boars, you name it. It is a stunning, deeply humanizing reminder that they weren't just surviving out there. They were observing, expressing, and creating. Which brings us to a really profound thought to wrap up today's explainer. We've spent all this time using crude stones and cave walls to piece together unwritten lives. It kind of forces us to flip the perspective, doesn't it? 1,000,000 years from now, long, long after our digital files have decayed or been completely lost, what physical tools, what modern stones or art will future archaeologists dig out of the ground to decipher the story of our era? Food for thought. Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.